Hello, everyone, and this is the last minute of play in the third period. So I got a little something to start off the show, which is either going to be a great little segment or it's going to fall flat on its face. So as we know, in the NBA season, the Toronto Raptors haven't had to deal with LeBron James because he's on a very, very mediocre Lakers team. But they've been faced with challenges like the Greek Freak, how do you say his name again?
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah. But I think LeBron is still trying to tamper with the Raps from the Western Conference. During a game against the Lakers this past week, post-game cameras picked up on microphone of him saying good game to Kawhi Leonard. And before they parted, LeBron said, "Be in touch."
Oh my.
So I want you guys to give me two takes on this matter. I want you to give me what you actually think, and then I want to hear your best impression of how the Raptors fan base handled this.
I mean, okay. These guys are all part of a union. It's a non-contact sport, so there's not that many cases of legitimate beef. They're probably already friends. They even played together at the All-Star game. So, my general reaction to this is, eh?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the fan base, it's kind of like that meme of the dog sitting in the burning house. This is fine. I think that's exactly how Raptors fans feel.
No, I think Raptors fans were a lot angry about it than this is fine meme. I feel like you and I are in the burning house.
Okay, yeah.
Looking at Kawhi's inevitable departure, just like, this is fine.
Oh, yeah. We just burned a bunch of assets. Who needs them?
And that horn means that you are now entering overtime on CHSR 979 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, broadcasting to our local audience on CHSR-FM.ca and to anyone around the world who is interested, thanks to our vidcasts on YouTube.com, which you've been doing a fine job with, Jonathan, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shut up, Kaley.
I'm not being sarcastic.
The 5 minutes preceding this show is you just calling me amateur hour because I forgot to turn the camera on before I sat down. Then I had to delete a bunch of stuff off the
but
clips.
you set up the banner, the studio lights, the camera, the sound.
Yeah, but that's just you kissing my rear end in order to make yourself seem like
legitimately, I showed the show to a couple of my new coworkers on Friday.
Yeah, but none of those had the lights in them yet.
No. When we were at work, you can listen to the radio. I had them listen to the episode that we did, and I talked up your sound work, and I think what did we even talk about on Friday?
We talked about
Nationals.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah, because Sean, I remember Sean was telling a story at the end of the
David Kelly.
Yeah.
And
about calling the AUS winning game.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes my compliments are authentic.
Yeah. Anyways,
every now and again.
My rear end has had a good kissing so far, so let's get into March Madness.
Yes, so we're going to have another episode of Kaley Learns You a Thing. For anyone who is new to the show, this is when I talk about something that I have a decently in-depth knowledge of. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the greatest NCAA basketball mind out here, but I'm competent.
Yeah. But compared to me, I am uneducated on most NCAA sports, and especially basketball.
So what we're going to do here is it's going to be a little bit harder to do the entire bracket. We're talking 68 teams. Just in the first round matchups alone, there's, 32 matchups and the first 4 matchups. So we're talking 36 games in the first and second round.
Okay, so explain to me what you were kind of explaining in the group chat that you said would be easier to explain on camera. I didn't know it was it's all the division, the conference winning teams.
Okay,
and then there's 30 other teams that were selected today, just tonight at the time we're recording this.
Yes.
So so what all of 68 teams in total?
Yep.
Tell me how those are all determined.
Okay, so how it works is there are 32 conferences in NCAA basketball incorporating 347 schools.
That's crazy.
For anyone who's looking for a comparative, I think U Sports was advertising during the University Cup. They have 4 conferences encompassing 53 schools.
Yeah.
So you're talking 7 times the schools and 12 times the conferences, 11 times the conferences.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, 8 times the conferences. I can do math.
It's still ludicrous.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of them, and they range from what we would call the Power Six conferences, which are the conferences that are sort of dominant in both football and basketball. That includes, formerly the Big East, but the Big East is now a basketball-only conference, but like the Pac-12, the Big Ten, which has 14 teams in it, the Big 12, which has 10 teams in it.
Okay.
Things like that.
Yeah. So I know it's called like the NCAA Division I championship.
Yes.
So are all the 30 teams that are coming in not Division I teams?
No, they are all Division I teams. These are the
Okay. So there's even more Division II and III teams outside of
the
this?
Division II National Championship is starting this weekend. Their selection Sunday was last week.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And if you go through each of those divisions, it's wild. I think Division III, which is like, it's kind of hard to explain for the U.S. It's so complicated. But Division III is like low-end colleges and that sort of thing. I think Division III has something like 500 or 600 members.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
And some of them are and some of the conferences are wild. Like one of them I think is like the New York Interior Collegiate Athletic Conference, NYICAC. It's literally just like the 6 or 7 or 8 whatever other colleges that aren't like highly touted universities in just like the New York and Buffalo area.
Whoa.
Like there's a lot.
Yeah.
Like tons, which sort of makes sense when you think about it from like a logistics standpoint, because there's 10 times the people in the U.S. and presumably on sort of a 1-to-1 10 times the student population.
So I guess for context, so I'm getting that Division I is essentially like U Sports, and then the division below is kind of like ACAA or
Division 2 would be like ACAA. And then I don't know if there's just athletic division beneath that in Canada, but that would be like Division 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
in fact, reasonably, we should say U Sports is probably about equivalent to U.S. Division 2 with some notable exceptions, because Simon Fraser University in BC actually transitioned a bunch of their sports to the NCAA because they wanted to play in Division 2. Their football team's been playing Division 2 football, and they're like winless in 3 seasons.
Whoa. Yeah.
Just to give you like a 1-to-1 context. That's why you'll see guys make the leap from the NCAA to the NHL, but when guys make the professional leap from U Sports, they're typically making it to the ECHL or the AHL.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
And they're only getting...
And that's Division 1, by the way. Like that's Division 1 NCAA to the show.
Yeah. And not to like toot our own horn here, but like you have to be on like the top teams in U Sports to get just to the AHL.
Eric Drummy said that UNB's best team ever had 5 players go to the A.
Yeah.
Go to the A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it like Maye, Braze?
Yeah, like I mean, like, the names don't matter. My point is that when you're talking level of competition, NCAA Division I is like up there. But you'll see that sometimes Division I schools can't compete with these U Sports teams. We saw UNB beat Providence, who is a Division I school, in a challenge series a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, that was off season. The rosters weren't both at 100%, but there's some overlap there. But if we're talking generally speaking, I would trust a top tier Division I basketball school would take Carleton to town.
Yeah.
In fact, Carleton played some exhibition games against lower end Division I talent at the beginning of this season, and I'm pretty sure they lost one game by like 20.
That's crazy.
And people pointed out that how weak one team was because they lost to Carleton.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Carleton's a dynasty.
Yeah.
In U Sports.
And U Sports has a long way to go to catch up to NCAA. So getting back to March Madness. So the other 32 teams.
Okay, so there's 32 teams that get in. Now these are not the regular season winners. There's a conference tournament at the end of the year. It's a single elimination playoff. Whoever wins that tournament gets that conference's automatic bid.
Okay.
The remaining 36 teams are at-large selections.
Okay, so they're from all those tournaments that are played.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's a bunch of, like, second or third place finishers from those tournaments.
For the most part, but you get to some weirdness. Like, I think it's the...
Oh, because there's, like, bias. Like, some conferences are
Some
stronger.
conferences are... Like, it's not even bias. Some conferences are stronger.
Okay.
The top 4, like, the final 4 of the Atlantic Coast Conference ACC tournament had the teams that were ranked in the, like, national rankings 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 17th.
Yeah. So like their top 5 every year goes to March Madness.
In fact, 3 of the 4 1 seeds at this year's March Madness are all from the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Okay.
Virginia's a 1 seed, Duke's a 1 seed, North Carolina's a 1 seed. The last 1 seed is Gonzaga, who is sort of a weird topic. We'll talk about Gonzaga.
I think they're actually winless against other number 1 seeds.
Who, Gonzaga?
Probably. Ever.
But we'll get into Gonzaga a little bit here.
Okay.
So that's how it works. The brackets are seeded the teams are seeded 1 to 16. The 4 weakest conference champions are put into what are called the play-in games.
Okay.
So on Tuesday and Wednesday, so tomorrow night and the night after, they will play each other for the right to advance to the tournament and play number 1 seeds. Mm-hmm. In addition, the selection committee selects the last 4 teams to make the tournament. They tend to try to do 2 mid-major teams that aren't from power conferences, 2 major or power conference teams. Those teams play for the right to be seeded as 11 seeds.
Okay.
So what'll happen is they'll have the play-in games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are all in Dayton, Ohio. They've always been in Dayton, Ohio for the length of time that they've been a thing, which has only been a couple of years. Before that, it was the tournament field was 65 teams, and the 2 weakest 16 seeds would play to get in. But they sort of expanded that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what'll happen is the main tournament, the round of 64, round of 32 will be this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
And then it'll be a week off, and then the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 will be next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the following weekend will be the Final Four and the championship.
Yeah, so it starts on what, Wednesday?
It will start on Tuesday, actually.
Tuesday,
The
okay.
first 4 games will be on Tuesday. I'm not sure which games those are. I think Sean has a bracket up. It might list which 2 are the 2 on Tuesday.
Yeah, it doesn't say specifically. I think it's
usually
NC
one
Central
11 seed game and one 16 seed game.
Yeah, it's NC Central and North Dakota State and Belmont versus Temple.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, so let's get to the bracket now. How do we want to approach this? Because I kind of want to, I want to know, how does it work with, picking a bracket? Because, I know you have a pretty good knowledge of NCAA college basketball. So, how do you go, I want to kind of walk through, how do you go by picking, because you don't know about every team.
It's impossible to. And I think anyone that tells you that they go into this season with, an in-depth knowledge of every team probably does about as well in their bracket pools as anybody else.
Yeah. I want to reiterate, I think you mentioned this before, it might have been 6 or 7 months ago or something like that when we brought up March Madness for some reason, but there just talk about that there's a long-standing reward for someone who has a perfect bracket.
Yeah, so I think it's Warren Buffett.
Okay. He's a former is he a former athlete? Or?
No. It's,
okay.
He might be. I don't actually know Warren Buffett's personal history, but he's a multi-billionaire, rich guy.
Big NCAA basketball fan.
Yeah, huge. If you pick a perfect bracket, he will give you $1 million.
Yeah.
He'll just give it to you.
Yeah, that's insane.
How long has
Actually, I think it's more than $1 million.
I think he said $1 billion.
Yeah, I think it's actually a B, billion with a B.
Really?
With a dollar sign.
Because I think the first place prize for ESPN's tournament is already $250,000 or something crazy like that.
Jeez. And how long is
No,
this?
it's got to be $1 million. Buffett's rich, but I can't imagine he's giving away $1 billion.
Yeah.
Either way, but that requires you to pick 63 games perfectly.
Okay. How long has this bet been long-standing?
No idea.
No idea?
I just know that it is a thing.
It's been over a decade, though, right? Easily? Yeah. So
Just it's so well known that Dude Perfect referenced it in the video that they did.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, where a guy literally pulls up in a Lambo and he goes, "I got a perfect bracket through day 1. Million's mine."
Oh, yeah?
Oh, no.
Wait, no, the dude bought a Lambo?
Well, he didn't actually buy it. It was the shtick for the video. Because the joke behind the video was dumb things that people do around March Madness time. March Madness stereotypes is the name of the video. So the guy, he has a perfect bracket through the first day, which is only 16 games. Not even 16 games.
No.
16 games.
Maybe.
Through the first weekend is 16 games or whatever. Through the first day, I think, is only 8.
Yeah. So maybe, Sean, you should slide your laptop over to Kaley so he can see the bracket and kind of
I have one on my phone.
Oh, you have one on your phone?
Yeah, okay. I do.
If you want to pull it up. So the term that I hear thrown around a lot is bracket busters. So
Okay, so a bracket buster. Okay, so first things first, I've got a couple of tips for bracketeers.
Okay.
And this is going to be just your basic tips. You should always follow these rules pretty generally. This is based on information from the last 5 years of the tournament.
Yeah.
In the last 5 years, at least one team seeded 7 through 11 has made the Final Four.
Okay.
At least one.
So there's one semi-Cinderella.
There's one. No, well, that's a Cinderella. Trust me. If you're talking about the history of the tournament, that's a Cinderella.
Okay.
I think the lowest seed to ever win the tournament is a 9.
Yeah.
I think is NC State.
Definitely never had a double digit.
Yeah, and of course we had our first 16 seed beating 1 seed, but that was
just the first round. They lost by like 7 points in the second round. Just done.
Yeah.
They were done on the first weekend. Mm-hmm. But yeah, something to keep in mind. One seed 7 to 11 has made the Final Four for the last 5 years. So there's one team that's in that range. You're trying to find Cinderella.
Yeah.
By the way, good friggin' luck.
Yeah. So that's like the first kind of like hoop. Like if you get past that round with a perfect bracket, you're looking good, but it probably never happens.
No. At least one number 1 seed has made the Final Four every single year. Usually, 2 number 1 seeds make the Final Four.
Okay.
With the exception of 2014, a number 1 seed has always been in the championship game.
Okay.
2014 was sort of a weird exception where it was like 7th seeded someone against 8th seeded Kentucky. It was very weird. But normally a 1 seed's in the championship game.
Okay.
They're usually not playing a 1 seed. They will sometimes. They did last year. But usually it's a 1 seed against somebody else.
So you're kind of looking. So 3 things you're looking for so far is your potential Cinderella. You're like maybe like 4th or 5th or like 3rd or 4th seed that's gonna like overcome like the small hurdle, like beat a number 1 or something like that, and then the
2 number 1s you have the most faith in.
And then the team that's supposed to be in the final.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the record, for anyone who's wondering, there will eventually be another UMBC. Eventually, another 1 seed is going to lose.
Okay.
Should you put that in your bracket this year?
No.
Absolutely friggin' not.
Yeah.
You want to know what? You want to actually do yourself a really, really big favor to make sure you have an accurate bracket? Don't bet on a 15 beating a 2 either.
No. Okay.
That's happened, I think, 8 times.
Okay.
Yeah, it happened a few years ago. I think it was Michigan State.
It does happen. It absolutely does happen.
Okay.
But very, very rarely. And I think the last 15 seed that anyone really remembers is Florida Gulf Coast because they were the first 15 seed to ever make the Sweet 16.
Okay.
Dunk City.
Alrighty. So those are the kind of 3 things that we have to look for. Now,
Oh, and one last thing. This is not really a tip, but it's something to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. So we know Virginia got upset by UMBC. It's really not that weird for Virginia. Virginia's regional, so the section of the bracket that Virginia has just always been weird.
Okay.
Over the last 5 years...
Which conference is this, by the way?
Conferences don't matter now. They're seeded East, West, Midwest, and... South.
Okay, so which part of the bracket is this?
I'm not sure which side of the bracket Virginia's in. They're a 1 seed. They're in the South.
Yeah.
South, yeah.
Yeah, and they get G-Web.
Because you have to remember, the teams don't have to be assigned regionally. Usually the top seeds are sort of assigned regionally. So like North Carolina's in the Midwest, Duke's in the East, Gonzaga's in the West.
So like a typically known like East Coast team could be put in the South?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
They absolutely could be. Because all that dictates is where your Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games are taking place.
Okay, this is another thing that I have a question about. Is this all played on like a certain designated set of courts?
Yes.
Okay,
So they select what are called pod hosts.
Okay.
So every single, and how the pod hosts work is pods host 3 games.
Okay.
They host a round of 64 game, or 2 round of 64 games, and the round of 32 game that they lead to. So
Okay.
they'll host a 1 and 16, an 8 and a 9, and then the round of 32 game.
So there's like a small bracket of 4 that like one team will come out of playing
Yeah.
on that court.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they'll go to whatever their regional court is. So that's the East, Midwest, South, or West one.
And play like a couple more games.
And then
there.
it'll go the same way. Because you have to remember, at this point, it's the Sweet 16, so there's only 4 teams left in each region.
Oh,
And then
okay.
they'll play down to the Final Four, which is this year in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's possible, like Virginia, who are they playing in the first round, Sean?
G-Web.
So Gardner-Webb is from, can you look that up really quick for me?
So with Minneapolis hosting, does their basketball team get any favors put in when they choosing like the 68 teams that are chosen? There's no like host
There's
team
no
spot.
guarantee. No, there is not. I
Okay.
think Minnesota is in the bracket. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure they're at 10.
Yeah. So if they're picking this, they're probably going to pick someone who's going to be in there on their own merit, anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gardner-Webb is in Boiling Springs, North Carolina.
Yeah, so Gardner-Webb's pretty south. So that sort of fits. But
Okay.
Yeah.
you'll see this a lot of the time is like the Kansas, I think, is in the Midwest bracket. They're a 4 seed,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
Kansas, yes, 4 seed.
For their first round game, they don't really get any advantage, but the Midwest bracket's being hosted in Kansas City. So even though Kansas is the 4 seed, if they can make it to the Sweet 16, they essentially get home court.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Okay. So moving on with that, like,
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, Virginia's bracket's just always been weird.
Okay.
The least weird it was when Virginia made the Elite Eight, and they got upset by 10 seed Syracuse, who went on to the Final Four.
so what makes it weird? It's just there's a lot of upsets happen.
Yeah,
or-
it just... There's no reason for it. It's not Virginia's fault. Well, last year was kind of Virginia's fault. But it's not Virginia's fault. It's just whatever.
Oh, it's literally followed this one team.
Yeah, Virginia's bracket for the last 5 years, their regional for the last 5 years has been weird.
Where'd you find that stat about?
It's just true.
Oh, okay.
Someone wrote about it on the college basketball boards last year when they got upset by UMBC.
Really?
So I went back and actually did the check on it when we were prepping for this show.
Okay.
Yeah, he's right. The least weird it was the year they got upset in the Elite Eight by a 10-seeded team, then they went to the Final Four.
Yeah. So Virginia is basically like the roaming monkey wrench in the bracket.
Yeah.
So that's like pretty much like the first or second hurdle that you'll face, like in getting your bracket.
And that's the thing is, even if it's not Virginia's region, there will be one region where the bracket doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It just happens. Because teams win when they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing that people don't think about for the Final Four is you have a 5-12 game, and you have a 4-13 game.
Yeah.
If the 12 and the 13 seeds both win, the brackets don't reseed. So the 12 and the 13 then play in the round of 32. That means that you're guaranteed to have a team seeded 12th or lower in the Sweet 16. And they
Okay.
don't have to beat the 4 and the 5 to get there. They could beat the 5 and then the 13.
Is this coming from? Is it John Boyce from SPA? He was talking about how
John Boyce does do a video about how technically it's easier to advance from the middle areas because you're more likely to face lower seeded teams because of upsets.
Yeah.
And it's true. But that's not exactly why. I'm just making the point that is something that statistically happens.
Yeah.
Because if a 1 seed wins, the worst team they can play is a 9 seed. But if a 12 seed wins, they could play a 13.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. So getting on with it, obviously we don't have time to pick through like every single matchup and everything like that. So should we maybe like some picks for maybe like the Sweet 16, then the final, then what is it? Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. So
what I would do here is I listened to the entire selection show. I went over a bunch of things that I think are of note.
okay.
I think I should go over what those are for
Yeah.
the benefit of people who are listening.
I think you should educate us on like what you think we should look out for. Who do you think will get to like maybe like the Elite 8 or the Final Four or something like
and
that?
I would do Final Four picks, but I'm going to point out that my Final Four picks have been as wrong as anybody's.
Yeah, but I also want to know like what are your 3? What's your Cinderella, your kind of mid-range team who makes, and then the number 1 who is gonna like live up to their rank?
yeah. Who's the favorite going in?
We'll maybe we should start with that first.
Duke.
Duke. Yeah.
Duke.
Which I don't think is anybody's surprise. Zion
That's-
Williamson is back after his injury. We talked about the shoe exploding.
Yeah, didn't he drop like an insane game his first?
Yep.
First.
He had a really good
back.
ACC tournament too. Duke are ACC tournament champions, number 1 seed. I think they're the number 1 seed overall in the tournament.
Yeah. Injuries not ailing him at all. He's still...
and he like his secondary scorer on the team is Canadian RJ Barrett, who's a house and is going to go top 5 in the NBA draft.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Duke is your favorite number 1. So I guess like your what is it like 3 or 4 or 5 seed that's gonna be kind of like your mid range that could make the final?
So what I actually did here was I actually went through and I did news and notes, and these aren't in any particular order because I did them as I was watching CBS's Selection Sunday show.
Okay.
But I'm going to go through the news and notes, and then if there's anything that you guys hear that interests you, we'll go back and we'll talk about it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Number 5 seed Mississippi State is possibly an underseeded team. They have 8 what are called quadrant 1 wins.
And what number are they again? Sorry, I missed.
They're a number 5 seed.
Number 5 seed.
Mississippi State.
And they're
Bulldogs.
underseeded. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're underseeded.
And where do you think they should be seated?
They should definitely be like 4 or higher.
Okay.
I don't think they're heavily underseeded, but I think they are underseeded as a 5. I think it's because they had sort of like a mediocre tournament performance, and the SEC is a good conference, and they weren't one of the best teams in it.
Okay.
But they have 8 what are called quadrant 1 wins. Now, this is a sort of new metric, so I'll explain it. There's a thing now called the NCAA evaluation tool, what we call the NET. Mm-hmm. And what it is it's literally a computerized algorithm that takes all the data that we have for NCAA teams and tries to lower it down to one number.
Okay.
And rank every single team in order from 1 to whatever.
Okay.
Amongst that, they have a thing called quadrant wins. So any team that's like 1 to 50 or 75, essentially it divides all the teams in the NCAA into 4 quadrants based on their net. And anytime you beat a team that's in the top quarter of NCAA teams, you get a quadrant 1 win that it adds onto your score. So they have 8 of those wins. Now I realize the rest of their record, like they're like I think 24 and 10, 23 and 10 is not the most impressive record, but like 8 quadrant 1 wins, like those are the teams you're going to play in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So so they're doing pretty well against like
High level competition.
And the exact competition they'll face in this tournament. Okay.
Keep an eye on LSU. They're a number 3 seed. They're having internal turmoil right now. Their coach, Will Wade, is under investigation because the FBI intercepted an apparent call with a middleman about a recruit. They think the middleman might be a bagman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this is like that money, that whole Mississippi State documentary where they're like...
they don't know for sure. It's just that the way that the call seems to have been going, like what we know from the details is like apparently... Wade was angry because someone was trying to cut them out of the recruiting process because he didn't get a large enough slice of the pie. Okay. And he references that he hopes that the person in question will do the smart thing. Conveniently, after last year, LSU got a recruit with the last name Smart.
Oh.
So people think that they were kind of codified talking about bagmen and this particular freshman recruit.
There are cases that the Pentagon handles that are not as like
he got busted by the FBI.
Yeah, like there are cases that like the Pentagon and like high level like FBI, they like do they ever have to decode stuff like this? Like I know there's like when they're dealing with like maybe like terrorism or something like that, but like dealing with this with like basketball and stuff like that, that's crazy.
Big money, man.
That is there's
so much money in college basketball. It's wild.
And the universities get it all.
Yep.
Because they don't have to pay players or anything like.
LSU's a huge football school too.
Yeah. So if they get caught, will they be automatically kicked out of the tournament?
More than likely not. What'll happen is they probably won't conclude the investigation until after the season is over, and then they'll vacate any success that LSU has. But I wouldn't bet on the Tigers.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to win when you're dealing with stuff like this.
Well, yeah. I guess the probability is low enough that like any distraction basically sinks you at this point. So,
number 11 seed Belmont is in one of the play-in games. They're a small program with a ton of pedigree. They're pretty famous for an upset of Duke a few years ago. They're 500 or better against opponents in every quadrant. Okay. They have no quadrant 4 losses.
So do you think Belmont could be like the Cinderella for this year? Maybe.
We'll talk about a few more here, but it's just something to keep in mind because VCU a few years back was in this exact same situation. First 4 game, and they rode the momentum from winning that first 4 game all the way to the Final Four.
So they definitely have upset potential going into the tournament.
Yeah. Do they? Does the fact that you had to play a play-in game, has anyone made it from a play-in game to a national title?
Not to a national championship,
no. To a national championship?
VCU has made a Final Four.
Okay.
And teams in the play-in games actually tend to do pretty well because it's sort of the last 4 teams in, but these are the last 4 teams in based entirely on their own merit.
Okay.
And in Belmont's case in particular, they're from the Ohio Valley Conference, which is a small conference that usually doesn't send more than 1 team. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Belmont's resume was strong enough for them to get a shot like this indicates that the selection committee thinks they're a very good team.
So, therefore, they gave them a chance to be the 11th seed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is notable because they lost their conference final to Murray State, the Racers. Wouldn't bet against Murray State either, but Murray State's a 12 seed.
Okay.
even though they beat Belmont. Mm-hmm. Which should tell you how much confidence the selection committee has in Belmont.
Yeah, like on the majority, like they're better than that team.
Yep.
Okay.
Those two teams are rivals. They're an 11 and 12 seed respectively. I'd feel pretty confident in picking them.
Are they on a path to meet at any point in time?
Like, not until near the end, because that's the thing with being lower seeds, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
But,
yeah, that's true.
I forget who Murray State's playing in the first round. I know Belmont's got a play-in game against Temple.
Yeah. And, yeah, the winner of that one plays Maryland.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty easy win for Belmont, personally. But I don't know who Murray State's playing. If Sean
Murray State. Do you know what
They're
seed
a
they're?
12.
They're a 12.
They might be playing Mississippi State.
Murray State.
Anyway, well, Sean's checking that really quickly. Of note, number 16 seed Gardner-Webb, number 15 seed Abilene Christian are in their first NCAA tournaments ever.
Okay.
Wouldn't pick them. That's usually a pretty big death knell, but, it's a big accomplishment for those programs.
Being in your first tournament, like
This is their first national championship ever.
Murray State's playing Marquette.
Yeah. Like, I would have confidence in both of those Ohio Valley teams.
so no newbies like get very far in this tournament.
Typically not. Like I said, Florida Gulf Coast was a 15 that made the Sweet 16. Like, that was super. That's never happened. They were the only time it ever happened. If Abilene Christian upsets a 2 seed, that'd be a pretty big deal. I think Gardner-Webb's pretty dead, but
Okay.
like, I don't know. Cinderellas are nice. Like, even if Abilene Christian wins one game, right? What's notable for them is Abilene Christian was a Division II school in basketball until just a few years ago and moved their programs up to Division I like 6 or 7 years ago. So this has been like a very fast turnover for that school.
Well, for them, they also have to play number 2 seed Kentucky.
Yeah,
which
that's rough. Kentucky are like titans
Okay.
of basketball. Number 12 Oregon was what they call a bid stealer. So this is a concept I'll explain. We mentioned the bubble. Anytime that a team that isn't expected to make the tournament wins their conference championship and forces the selection committee to pick a regular season champion as an at-large team, it technically takes a bid away from the bubble because in a lot of cases they want to submit those teams. So Murray State was a bid stealer because when Murray State made it in, the selection committee then had to select Belmont.
Oh, okay.
When Oregon won, the selection committee then had to select Washington.
Okay.
Things like that.
Okay.
They're on a pretty good run. They won the Pac-12 conference tournament despite being sort of out of it. They're a 12 seed. I don't think they'll win their first round game. It's just a notable seed to mention. Number 13, UC Irvine. Number 12, New Mexico State have 30-win seasons despite their low seeds because they're from smaller
And
conferences.
how many games? How many games in the NCAA season?
Like 35.
35. Okay.
They're like 30-5 and I think 31-4.
Okay.
So it's just a weaker conference kind of case.
Yeah.
Are there any perfect teams this year?
No.
No perfect teams.
I think the closest is Wofford at 30-4.
What was the
29-4?
What was the last time there has been perfect seasons in NCAA? Right?
One, Memphis. That season actually got vacated for violations.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For what violations were they?
Don't even know. Wait. Ineligible player? The entire season?
Oh, really?
Something like that? Yeah.
How does that? I don't get how that happens. Like that's.
It was a big name NHL, or not NHL, NBA or two. I don't remember who it is now.
Oh, okay.
I'll remember it later, too. I'll feel bad about it. St. Mary's is an 11 seed. Gonzaga was the number 1 team in the top 25. St. Mary's had to beat Gonzaga to get into the tournament.
Oh, okay.
They were also a bid stealer because they won the West Coast Conference title when it looked like the only team that was going to go was Gonzaga, who were the best team in the country.
Yeah. All right.
Duke has their 1-2 punch back. They also won the best conference in college basketball. Number 7 seed Cincinnati is probably underseeded given that they won the Big East over a highly ranked Houston team, but fell about where they were in the top 25 seeding-wise to begin with.
Okay.
So them winning the conference tournament today didn't change their seed at all. So as a 7 seed, they're going to be a pretty tough run for whichever 2 seed they play. Number 3, Houston has a school record 31 wins. It's their most winning season in school history. This team was a mid-major with an insane level of pedigree. The Phi Slamma Jamma fraternity, as they affectionately called them in the 80s. They just a powerhouse mid-major, dominated everyone for a very long time. Lots of notable NBA players came out of Houston. They were sort of quiet for a while. Now they're in a major conference. 31-win season, 3rd seed. You asked me, like, who are the 2 and 3s to look out for? Houston. I think they're in Virginia's bracket, too.
No, they are not. They're in North Carolina.
North Carolina's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and they play Georgia State, but if they win, they're going to play Iowa State or Ohio, which isn't really.
Yeah, Ohio State's
no?
not great. Iowa State did win the Big 12 tournament championship, but that was coming out of nowhere because the entire season was a battle between Texas Tech, Kansas State, and Kansas.
Okay.
So, like, even if Iowa State wins, like, they're like, even though they won a conference tournament, they've won like 12 of their last 13 games. They're still allegedly on the lower end of that conference. But if we're talking about like middle seeds that could make a run, Iowa State, like, I realize I said like a 7-11 seed has made it every year, but like 6 is pretty close. That's another team to look out for. Number 7 seed Wofford. I want to talk about Wofford here for a minute. So they're a small conference school, and they're currently on a 20-game winning streak.
Okay. Is that the largest in the NCAA right now? Okay.
They're extremely underseeded. They were ranked in the top 20.
Okay.
And they were given a 7 seed.
Okay.
Doing math, that means they should be in the 25 to 28 range. Mm-hmm. They, rankings-wise, they were ranked 20th, which means they should have gotten a 5 seed.
What's their strength of conference?
Not very.
Not very?
That's one of the big things for Wofford is they play in a very small conference. But this team is very, very good.
Okay.
And they've won their last 20.
They've won 20 in a row.
20 in a row.
It sort of reminds me of Butler before Butler moved on to a major conference and had those 2 crazy runs that anyone who knows college basketball knows about. Butler was a small conference school that was heavily underseeded. They were ranked in like the top 16 or whatever all season, or like I even think higher than that, and they were given like a 5 seed, even though they were at the end of the season, they were ranked inside like the top 10. People were like disgusted. And then Butler proceeded to make a run all the way to the championship game and literally missed winning a national championship by like an inch.
Why? Because like there's one missed shot?
They had to throw up a half-court heave at the end, and sports science did the math, and they missed the angle they needed by like an inch.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Would have been one of the biggest miracle runs in NCAA history.
So what did it hit the rim? It hit the rim?
Backboard rim out.
Wow.
And then Butler had a worse season the next season. Were given an 8 seed, made it all the way to the championship game again. Because that team was actually really, really good.
Yeah, but because of those performances, they got bumped up to like a stronger conference.
They were offered an opportunity to move to the Big East, yeah, and they took it because why wouldn't you? There's way more money and stuff in that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They had a terrible year this year. That's why they're not here.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, Wofford reminds me of that team.
Okay.
Really, really good.
Any like
criminally underseeded,
notable prospects coming out of their pool?
I don't know if anybody from that team's going to make the NBA. Again, this is one of those really difficult things where, like, the top 1% of NCAA athletes makes it to the NBA. If there's 347 schools and their basketball rosters are 10 to 15 players deep, you're talking thousands of athletes, 3,500 athletes.
Yeah.
Of which 1% is going to make the show.
How many rounds in the NBA draft? Like 6?
7.
7,
I think.
7 times that, so that's 210.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
and not all of those guys come from the NCAA.
Yeah, and not all of those guys make it, despite the fact that they're drafted too. So yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say. That's not to say that there isn't like this is something that people don't really remember that much because it's happened so far in the rearview mirror. But Steph Curry played for Davidson College.
Yeah, because that was his hometown team. Like, didn't his parents go there or something like that?
His dad, yeah.
His dad did. Yeah, man, that just like magnifies the criminal activity that is not paying players in the NCAA.
Talking about, you asked me 3 seeds that I have faith in. Texas Tech is an underseeded 3 seed.
Okay,
they're a major conference program. They've been ranked in the top 8 of the top 25 for most of the season. Won the Big 12 regular season title. The only reason they're probably on the 3 seed line is because they lost in their conference tournament.
Okay.
This team should be a 2 seed, but they're a 3 seed, and they're a 3 seed that doesn't have that hard of a road. I don't know who the number 1 seed is in their conference.
That's Gonzaga.
Yeah, but Gonzaga has this really bad habit of choking when they get to the big stage. Tech's a 3 seed that I'd keep an eye on. Their first round games against who?
Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, and the Norse aren't that good. By the way, Northern Kentucky's team name is the Norse, on the topic of really sweet team names.
The Norse?
Yeah, they're the Northern Kentucky Norse.
Isn't that
and their logo is a Viking helmet and 2 swords.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Isn't it like a Greek reference or something like that?
Yeah, Nordic.
Norway, yeah. Like Vikings.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Number 7, Nevada. You asked me, who's my 7-11 Cinderella? Number 7, Nevada was set up for a 4-seed or better. They were ranked in the top 16 for most of the year. They were actually ranked as high as like 5 at one point this year, but they took a couple bad losses, and it's hard for mid-major teams to take losses because they're usually taking them to weaker competition.
Yeah.
They should have been a 4 seed, but they lost early to a bad team in their conference tournament, so they're underseeded. Horribly underseeded.
Where are they seated at?
7.
So that doesn't necessarily give them that like easy kind of road though, right?
No, it means they play a 2nd seed in their second round. I don't know who they'll play if they win the first round game.
If they win their first round, they play, well, assuming the top seeds get through Michigan.
Yeah, Wolverines are tough. They're a scary team.
Tough out.
They're also Big Ten conference champions. But, yeah, no, Nevada's criminally underseeded.
Okay.
That team's good.
So you have Nevada as your Cinderella.
I think Texas Tech is my 3, which means that Virginia and Duke are my... Or wait, no.
You said Duke is your number one.
Yeah, Duke's my number 1. I don't think they're going to win a national championship. Again,
okay,
Duke is one of those teams that has kind of a bad history with this tournament.
So
right?
tell me a little bit about that, because I vaguely remember like highlights of like, did they miss like a really, really like clear shot at like the end of a game that cost them a national title or something like that?
Probably.
Yeah, like how did why did they have that reputation? What are some of those games?
It's sort of like people kind of call it the Duke dilemma. It's also what Dude Perfect calls it in that same March Madness video I've referenced once before.
Is there a documentary on this or a 30 for 30 on this? There's got to be.
There should be.
Yeah.
The thing with Duke is they either like go the distance or crumble.
Okay.
There is no in between. You can't trust Duke to make like an Elite 8 run and lose.
They are the Jake Gardner of the NCAA.
Yeah.
They're either
all or
like,
nothing.
They'll make the Final Four, they'll lose on the first weekend, and there's just no telling what it'll be. Sometimes they'll be like, they were like 30-point favorites to Belmont like a decade ago, lost that game.
Yeah, so like when they win, it's like, okay, yeah, you should have won.
Yeah.
And then when they crumble, it's like
What are you doing?
Pants around your ankles in the middle of everyone, like falling, breaking your nose, you hit your face that hard.
It's a slapstick routine.
Yeah, exactly. So most embarrassing way possible. So,
like, I'm not exactly sure who's left because. So, which bracket's Nevada in? They're in Gonzaga.
Yeah, they're in the West, so they're with Gonzaga.
Yeah, so the thing is, Texas Tech and Nevada are in the same bracket. In fact, they're set for a collision course. I think whoever wins that game is going to the Final Four. I would bet on Texas Tech over Nevada. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say Texas Tech's my 3. I think Duke's in. I think. Virginia's in. Who did I mention in North Carolina's bracket?
That would have been Wofford.
Yes, Wofford. Wofford's a 7 seed. Like, if you're going to pick a small conference Cinderella, pick Wofford. I also don't hate Belmont. I don't know where their play-in game puts them.
Yeah. What's the number 1 seed in that bracket?
Where does Belmont's play-in game put them? Who's their number 1 seed?
In Belmont's.
Yeah.
Just a sec. There's so much to it.
Yeah. Sean living up to his name as our stats.
Maryland.
No, yeah,
Or
they
like-
win, but which bracket are they in?
Duke.
Okay. So, like, just because of that one, like, classic upset, I'd love to see Duke play Belmont at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, if I know how a bracket works, it's 3-6. So Belmont would be on the other side of the bracket. If Belmont played Duke in the Elite 8 for a shot at the Final Four,
That'd be
it'd
crazy.
be so good.
Yeah.
Be so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do those fan bases have any like bad blood between one another? I'm
Probably.
Probably from that game.
The thing is, this is one of those really weird things. Is
What's
trying
that?
to think. Like, I'm trying to think about like a good reference for it. I don't remember where I saw it, but I think it's like a Street Fighter reference. I think it's M. Bison. You know, the day that I destroyed your village might have shaped your entire life, but for me it was Tuesday.
Oh, okay. I see what you're getting there.
Like Belmont probably views that upset against Duke as like this like benchmark for the program. Duke probably just sees it as another bad upset that they've taken, right?
So Belmont's like there is like in the movie Balls of Fury when that what's Ricky Tan's nemesis from Europe comes all the way back after like 20 years after he beats him as like a kid.
Yeah.
In the Olympics and everything like that, and everything. Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Like, I get where you're going with this.
Yeah. You had one like high intensity moment like 20 years ago, and you both like went your separate ways immediately. There was no like real aftermath. You both like played out your lives, and then like you're back in completely different positions. and you're...
It was Street Fighter, 1994 Street Fighter movie.
Okay.
For you, the day that Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday.
Awesome.
And that's sort of how I feel Duke looks at Belmont. I don't think that's how Belmont looks at Duke. And I think that Ohio Valley teams don't get at-large bids. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And Belmont's the first in a while, I'm
in
guessing?
a long time.
Okay.
Or, I think, definitely not ever, but I have a hard time thinking of a time when the Ohio Valley Conference was this good, that you had two legitimate teams. Not saying Belmont's underseeded, because I don't think that they are, because they weren't ranked in the top 25 at all this year. But 11 seed? You're giving them an at-large bid. You put them in the tournament higher than the team that beat them.
Yeah. So...
What do you think of that team, right?
What's that?
If you're the selection committee, you saw them lose to Murray State. Murray State has an equivalent record to Belmont over the course of the season. Murray State's a 12. Belmont's an 11. What does that mean you're saying about Belmont? Some people would say, well, they're only 11 because, that's how the last 4 teams in games work. But
I think you're saying, okay, you're basically even. There's not much difference between an 11 and a 12 seed.
Yeah.
Is there? But you gave the team that lost the chance.
Arguably the easier road.
And, a chance to redeem. You have to play a game just to get into the actual bracket and everything.
Yes, but that's the thing with the last 4 teams in. But if Belmont wins that first game, they're an 11 seed. They play a weaker competition. They have an easier road from there.
Okay. But, wouldn't it be switched around if, what was the other team that they beat, that they
Murray
lost
State?
to? Murray State?
Yeah.
Would Murray State be in Belmont's position? You don't think so?
No. I don't.
Because Belmont wouldn't have gotten okay. I see.
Again, bid stealing.
Yeah. Well, it's just a testament, right?
I don't think that Murray State gets in if Belmont wins the conference tournament.
Yeah. So, the people who are selecting this definitely, see something in Belmont that not everybody else does.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good pick for a Cinderella.
Yeah.
So.
I like it. I think that you have a lot of these, mid-major schools that are good Cinderella picks. I think Wofford's a good one. I think Belmont's a good one. I think Nevada's a good one. I don't know who else is really in that seed range. Who's the 8-9 game? There's an 8-9 game with Utah State in it.
That one.
I think the winner of that plays Virginia.
Utah State and Washington.
And they play Virginia, right?
Or they play North Carolina.
Oh, they play, North Carolina, that bracket. I mentioned Wofford being another good team from that bracket because Wofford will play Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Utah State's another really good mid-major in that 7 to 11 range. People are saying that parity's becoming more apparent in NCAA basketball, where mid-majors are getting better talent for different reasons. Utah State's a good example of that. That team's strong.
So you're just recapping your Final Four here and everything. So you have Duke.
I have Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
I have Duke.
Duke.
I have Virginia, who I think are going to kind of remake from last year. And who's the 6th seed? Is Iowa State in UNC's bracket?
Yeah, North Carolina's, yeah.
Yeah, Iowa State.
Okay.
So I don't have a 7, but I have Iowa State making it. They're a 6. I just think they're so hot. They won the Big 12 conference title. They had to beat some pretty dominant teams to get there. I like the Cyclones. I like Texas Tech. I think the Big 12 is really strong. I think the ACC is really strong, and I think there's... As much as I want to see a small school make a Cinderella run, I don't think there'd be anything more poetic than the Final Four to be 2 ACC teams, 2 Big 12 teams. I just think that that's the way it's going to be.
Okay. So of your Final Four picks, if one, say all of them make it but one, which one's not making it?
I mean, I'm going to leave Iowa State out because they're the Cinderella, but I think it's Duke.
You think it's Duke?
I think Duke's the runaway winner pick. And I think you're crazy if you pick anybody else. But if there's a number one that I don't have, here's the thing. I don't have faith in North Carolina just because I don't think they're as good as the other 2 ACC teams. I don't have faith in Gonzaga because they never make it on the big stage, but it's the Duke dilemma, man.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to have faith that they're going to win their game. Who's the 8-9 game in Duke's bracket?
VCU and UCF.
We talked about Virginia Commonwealth going on a big run a couple years ago. Also UCF.
Yeah.
If you're the Knights, the Duke, How much do you kind of think about your football team and be like, you want to know what? We could do what they did.
UCF, that's the Gators, right?
No, UCF is the Knights, the team
the
that I
Knights.
always talk about in football.
Oh, okay, that's what I figured. I wasn't sure whether it was.
Yeah, Gators is just Florida. They're a
Gators
10
is Florida.
seed.
Yeah, and they play Nevada.
Yeah, and I think they're going to lose.
Yeah, I think the one year I paid a little bit more attention to March Madness was when the Gators either won or they were in like the championship game or something.
Yeah, they had a
like
couple
that.
good runs about a decade ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure what prospect they had. I think they had like a really talented. I think he played in the NBA, had a pretty good career and everything.
But yeah, so
And Duke could crash course with your Cinderella, which is Belmont.
yeah, I like Belmont too. I think at 11 seeds, I think those Ohio Valley teams should be seeded higher. Personally, I realize they were never in the top 25, so it's a hard sell. But
So do you think if they do end up on a collision course with Belmont, do you think Belmont takes it?
no, it's not. I'm my money's still pretty firmly on Duke.
Would you be surprised?
No.
You wouldn't be.
You understand?
surprised.
I'm not surprised if Duke doesn't make it out of this first weekend. I'm still going to pick them to make it all the way to the Final Four and lose to Texas Tech because I think that's who they play because they're on the same side of the bracket as Gonzaga's bracket, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have them losing to Texas Tech in the Final Four, but
The Duke dilemma.
man, Duke dilemma. They're going to have to play an 8. They're going to have to play an 8 or a 9 seed, and one of those teams is Virginia Commonwealth. Man, I never bet against VCU these days.
Yeah.
Team's good.
So
Yeah.
say your Final Four gets it. Who plays who? So you have
Iowa State plays Virginia, and Texas Tech plays Duke.
okay. So who?
I have
gets
T-Tech beating Duke. I think Texas Tech's way better than people give them credit for. Like I said, I think they're underseeded as a 3 seed.
Well, and they have a pretty easy road, too.
They should be a 2. Their road's not that hard.
Okay.
Who's the 2 seed that Texas Tech's on a collision course with?
That would be...
Michigan State.
Holy crap. Yeah, Michigan.
Oh, Michigan?
Yeah, just Michigan.
That's a tough game.
Yeah.
But either of those teams, I think, can beat Duke. And
So
then
you
on the other, I think I'm sort of obligated on the other side to pick Virginia. If the number 1 seed makes the championship game every year, and I think the
So you have Texas.
Cavaliers
Tech
aren't going to be
versus-
complacent.
yeah.
In one of these years, Virginia's bracket has to look normal.
Okay.
And I'm going to pick if there's going to be a year, I sort of pick this year.
So Texas Tech versus Virginia in the final game.
Yeah.
You pick Virginia.
Nope.
Oh,
I have
Texas
Tech.
Tech. So you have Tech. Okay.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think that team's way better than they're being given credit for. They won a Big 12 regular season title. They shared it with Kansas State. That's the first time in 11 years that Kansas didn't win the regular season title.
Yeah.
If you break a streak like that, you're good. Texas Tech not being on the 2 seed line is a tragedy. They're playing in the West bracket, so they'll get pseudo home court advantage as they go forward. I don't know where the West games are being played for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 this year.
Okay.
I should have had that queued up, but I do not.
No worries. It's been very helpful, by the way. Very
But-
helpful.
Yeah, I think that team's really good. I think the team's way better than people give it credit for. And unlike
Yeah.
Kansas State, who has some pretty unfortunate losses and been really inconsistent, Tech just hasn't been.
Well, Tech's 26-6 and 17-1 at home, so...
Yeah.
So
Maybe if they get a home game in there.
They're in a pretty favorable region, I think, and their fans tend to travel pretty well.
okay. So I guess this is hard. This is probably hard to predict because we won't know what kind of a heater or a streak they're on by the time they make it this far. Do you think both Big Four? Which of the 2 Final Four games do you think is closer?
Iowa State and Virginia.
Iowa State and Virginia.
I think if Iowa State continues this heater, they're on a run right now, 12-13 or whatever. They won the Big 12 tournament championship, beat K-State, beat Kansas. Teams on a good run right now. I think if they continue, they're on this big 10-game run or so by the time that they just tournament games. They're on an 8-game run by the time they run into Virginia.
Okay. And so the final game, if Texas Tech ends up playing Virginia, do you think it's close?
I like to think so. I think most national championship games are pretty close. I think it's a really, really good game, too, because the ACC and the Big 12 are pretty well known as scoring conferences. The Big 10's a defensively minded conference.
Okay.
Big 12 and the ACC, nope.
No. Hit
Nope.
them threes.
Score.
Well, and even in the past few years, we've had some pretty notable buzzer beaters in the Final Four and even in the finals.
Yep.
A few years ago, I think it was Villanova.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Anything can happen.
I guess March Madness, that's a good thing to kind of hear from I guess semi-professional. It's not necessarily, but it's the stage. It's definitely put on a professional stage for sure.
Yeah, and if you listen to a lot of analysts. Analysts are expecting a fair amount of upsets. Like I said, the parity amongst mid-majors is higher than it's ever been. Some of these lower-end schools have legitimate opportunities to do some serious damage. Liberty's a hot upset pick. Wofford's a hot pick to make the Sweet 16, which requires them to upset Kentucky. UC Irvine, 30 wins. New Mexico State, 30 wins. Let's not forget, like, Houston's a 3 seed, 31 wins. Like, can't overlook those teams.
So it's good, like, because compared to like most like major sports, like the final isn't necessarily like the best it could be. Like we saw that with like the Super Bowl this year.
Yep.
We've seen it too many times in like Stanley Cup final games or NBA final. Although the NBA final games have been pretty decent, I think, over the last couple of years, but still, it's pretty much.
There have been some bad championship games. Butler's second run to the championship when they played Connecticut. SB Nation did a video calling it the worst March Madness final ever.
Okay, why was it just like a blowout?
No, it was a boring, slow, non-scoring game. Excuse me.
Okay.
It was just bad.
I guess I'll ask you one more question before we just move on with the rest of the show. How much time do we got?
2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Have we done this whole thing on
Yes.
March?
That's awesome.
We have, in fact.
That's pretty good. I didn't realize.
Get me going on something I really know. I can talk for a long time.
Absolutely. So I guess the main thing, like the big thing, of course, is upsets. We've been talking about upsets and like parity and everything like that. And like this is why I'm kind of intrigued to kind of follow March Madness a little bit closer this year. If you had to pick, because I don't think this isn't part of like brackets or anything like that.
Yeah.
How many upsets? How many upsets do we see throughout the whole tournament?
Now, this is where you have to get into some really weird stuff really quickly, but I'm going to get into it really right now just to make sure that we kind of understand. The NCAA only considers a game an upset if the higher seeded team is 4 seeds or more higher than the other team.
Okay, so
that's
we can
officially considered an upset.
All right, let's play by that rule then.
The 6 to 11 games and down can all be first round upsets. In the second round, the 2-7 1-8 games can be upsets, but like the 3-6, 4-5 ones can't be.
Okay.
Generally speaking.
I love that they define it so like rigidly.
I don't know if they defined it or if someone else kind of went back and looked at it logically. Because the thing about the tournament's construction is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is where they put all the small schools, and they tend to put all the big schools at 10 or higher.
Okay.
So I think that's sort of where the idea comes from, is it's like a small, big type matchup.
Okay.
I don't know. I like a good 7.
You think 7?
Yeah, I think 7's a pretty good number. I have Wofford making the second round. That requires them to upset Kentucky in the first. I like Belmont to win a couple of games. I think those will both be upsets if you look at the bracket. I quite like... I think LSU is going to get knocked out pretty early. That might not be an upset because it might just be Maryland, but if it's Belmont, that's another upset there. Just from because that's the thing you have to remember is like if an 11 or 12 or 13 seed makes the Sweet 16, that's 2 upsets right there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a couple teams that are going to do that. So I think that's a few right there. If we're looking at my biggest upset, like thing that I think is super unlikely, but I have some sort of hope for, Abilene Christians in their first tournament. I think they're toast. They're playing Kentucky. If I'm picking a 15-2 game that I want to see go the way of the 15, Abilene Christian's story is too good. They've been in Division I for less than a decade, and they're playing in their first NCAA tournament. If they beat Kentucky, that's a massive win. Doesn't matter if they get dirted immediately afterwards. Mm-hmm. So if I'm picking a 15 seed, that's the 15 seed I'm rooting for. If I'm rooting for a 16 seed, I don't think they'll win. I'm rooting for Gardner-Webb just because I want to see Virginia bounced again. Yeah. If we're going through them all kind of like really, really quick, like 14 seeds, I don't really have any of these like sort of queued up really, really quickly. I like Yale. Yale's playing LSU in the first round. I like the Ivy League teams. So like that's a pretty good one. UC Irvine's a 13. I like them. Murray State's a 12. I like them. Belmont's an 11. I like them. So that, I just went through all my big kind of like, if I was going to pick an upset in that seed, bang, 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 bang. Done.
All right. And is that pretty much all the time we have?
That is all the time that we have here for Overtime on CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton. We'll be back on Friday from 2 to 3. We'll have an interview with Jason Hills. He reported for the Edmonton Sun on the U Cup last year. He's currently freelancing at the U Sports Volleyball Championships this year, but he's going to talk to us about the men's hockey championship.
And probably a little bit about the volleyball championship since he was there as well.
Since we have him on. And then we'll talk about the women's hockey championship as well on Friday. Thank you guys all for tuning in.